get through this.
Easy to listen. I was able to do it. Easy to dance. I'm not a great lover of cats. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Not me. That's my fear.
You're a disgrace, you are.
Hello and welcome to One-on-One Shadowboxing. Have your say. Today my guest in the studio is Bill Hassell. Bill Hassell is the Deputy Mayor of Nedlands. Hi Bill.
Hi Tibor, thank you for having me.
Today's topic is the big issue in the state, forced amalgamation of the councils, which is on the agenda now almost 6 years or maybe a little bit longer. Bill, before we go into this topic, can we hear something about your career? Why politics?
Well, I was brought up in the country and there were many deficiencies in government services and roads and so on, and I was interested in politics from about the age of 10. But I went into the profession of the law. Then I had the opportunity to go into Parliament in 1977. I stayed there until 1990.
And obviously you are a liberal politician.
I was a Liberal parliamentarian, yes. And I'm one of the few life members of the Liberal Party in Western Australia. But you never get all you want in politics, and I don't necessarily agree with everything that is done by state or federal Liberal governments. But the Liberal Party believes in the right of people to have opinions which are not orthodox, which don't follow the party line. But that's how it is, and I don't always agree, and sometimes I feel moved to say so.
Bill, why the Liberals?
Why did I join the Liberal Party?
That's correct.
Well, I was actually brought up
What attracted you?
I was brought up in a country party background, which became the Nationals, but when I went to university at the age of 17 and they had Freshers' Day and we saw the little stalls for the societies along the pond in front of Winthrop Hall, I just knew that my belief in the freedom of the individual, my belief in private enterprise, my antipathy to socialism and to totalitarianism directed me to the Liberal Party. And I've had several people ask me at different times to follow another course. Joe for PM wanted me to run as a senator for Western Australia for that campaign. And I said to the man who asked me, I joined the Liberal Party when I was 17, and whatever happens, I feel sure that I'll die a member of the Liberal Party.
We know that with these changes from the 60s, definitely you can experience as a voter in this country, all parties, they're breaking down their promises. They're not keeping promises. It's happened with Julie Gillard, big time, with the carbon tax. And it's now happening with Tony Abbott somehow, for some strange reason.
I think, as John Howard said recently, the public will give you a bit of slack if you come into government and some things can't be done immediately or just are impractical or things are worse than you expected. What the public won't let you do is just barefacedly ignore a commitment, a clear commitment for the sake of expediency. If a government like the Abbott government comes in and says, look, we've examined the situation, because you can't always get the facts when you're in opposition, so you don't know. You come into government and you find that the finances are as bad as Australia's are. I think the public will forgive you for taking some unpopular measures. The problem is the Abbott government can't get them through the Senate, and that the economic situation in Australia is quite serious in my view, in that, as was written very expertly by Janet Albrechtsen in the Australian today, we have not got a reform agenda, and we need a reform agenda, an economic reform agenda. And we've got to face some harsh realities, and of course the great issue of middle class welfare. I know that there are things I get from the government to which I could contribute more, and the middle class has to contribute more.
So local councils, which is, local governments, how do you feel the functions of local government in Perth or in WA? Is it compared with the eastern state better, worse, or just as good as anywhere else?
I can't make that comparison validly. All I can say to you is that the functions of local government are very critical to people. They are very concerned that their rubbish is dealt with properly. I mean, it's a dull topic talking about rubbish, but I've been talking about it in Nedlands for years because the timely removal of rubbish makes a city livable. And if it isn't removed and dealt with, the city becomes a filthy place. So that's a vital service. People don't want to get carried away, in my view. Local government is about local services, fundamental, important services that are dull and uninteresting. And when local government strays into areas outside its expertise, when it starts wanting to become the government of the state or deal with state or federal issues, I think it's off the tracks, quite frankly. I mean, like Colin Barnett, I think there are some reforms needed in local government. Unfortunately, I don't think they're the reforms that Colin Barnett is seeking to make. He calls them reforms. I don't call them reforms. I call them changes, because reform means for the better. And I don't think these amalgamations to make councils into great big bodies will do any good at all. And experience shows that in the eastern states. The academic studies that have been carried out by Professor Dollery, for example,
Yes.
have indicated. Now, I don't pretend to be an expert on Professor Dollery's work, so I've only read what's been reported of what he said, but he has laid it out that the savings, which Colin Barnett seems to think are self-evident, are not self-evident. And the efficiencies are not self-evident. And there has been no cost-benefit analysis undertaken. The basic position is that the Premier has not ever put the argument for what changes, these amalgamations that he wants. He hasn't put the argument. He's just said, this is it, this is obvious, this is what we're going to do, and he won't talk to people about it, he won't debate it in an open way.
He pretending he spent a lot of taxpayers' money on studies. And the conclusion of the studies, what they commissioned, is suggesting the best thing in the world now to do the amalgamations. What sorts of studies been done, and what was the briefing of those studies?
Well, I mean, if you're talking about the Robson report, the former Vice-Chancellor of the University of Western Australia, a very distinguished man, with two other distinguished people on the panel. But the Robson report was flawed before it began. Because the terms of reference said, advise us, the government, how to reduce the number of local authorities. It didn't say advise us whether we should reduce the number of local authorities.
And why we should do it.
But it just said advise us how to do it. Now, I made a long submission to that body, that inquiry, and I said, but you're not considering the main issue, and here is the reasons why you should consider the main issue. You see, my belief is that local government has no meaning if it isn't local. When you start getting these so-called local governments of 100,000 and 200,000 people with half a dozen representatives, it's not enough for there to be any connection with the people.
Which is very important.
Very important.
Yes.
We in Nedlands Council are in touch with our people. I ride my bike from where I live in North Nedlands over to Dalkeith quite often, sit there and have a coffee. Half the people who walk past say hello to me. And if they've got an issue with something in the council, they tell me. Because that's how it is. It's local government. It's not regional government. It's not state.
Micromanagement for the people.
It's micromanagement for the local issues.
So how this can, slip out from the focus of the government? I'm talking about Colin Barnett's state government. If they not recognizing that very importance, and if it's gonna be big, then it's lost.
I think that's so, and I don't understand to this day, I truthfully do not understand why Mr. Barnett is pursuing this course. He just seems to have a thing about it. Now, it is said by some opponents of Mr. Barnett that this is all about making life easy for developers, that they want big local authorities so it's easy to get developments passed.
But
Now,
is it the case?
It isn't. In my view, that's not the case, because the need to facilitate development has already been covered by the system of development application panels, development assessment panels.
Yes.
So if a person applies to us for a significant development, not just a domestic house, but a significant development, and we say as the Nedlands Council no, they can immediately go to a development assessment panel, which is a state body, got some Nedlands Council people on it, but it's a state body.
But makes the decision,
But
the final
makes
decision.
the final decision. So they've overcome the intransigence of some small local governments which get captured by interest groups. And there is a danger. There is a danger sometimes in local governments being captured by very narrow interests. I recognise that. Simply because I went on the council, I didn't instantly fall in love with local government. I see it warts and all. But I do think its localness is a thing of immense value, and people like that.
On that note, I think we're going for a short break, and after the break, coming back with more discussion with Bill Hassell on the issue of forced amalgamation of the local governments in WA.